March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and what better way than to talk to an expert from the Mayo Clinic. We're talking to Dr. Lisa Boardman. Dr. Boardman, welcome to Good Day Live.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to get to talk about this important issue.
Yeah, so let's dive in and talk about who is the greatest risk when it comes to colorectal cancer.
So the greatest risk are people who have a family history of colon cancer. So if they have one first-degree relative, like a parent, a brother or sister, or a child who had colorectal cancer, particularly under the age of 60, or if they have two or more first-degree relatives with this condition of having had colorectal cancer. And then there's also several other high-risk groups, and those are people who have known hereditary syndromes. Those are Lynch syndrome, familial polyposis syndrome, and some other more rare ones like juvenile polyposis and Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. And then another group are people who have had inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. They're also at higher risk after they've had the disease for roughly 10 years.
So, in your professional opinion, why do you think people are so reluctant to get the screenings?
I think that there are a couple of reasons. One is the person who doesn't want to know they have got colorectal cancer. And for those people who have that reason, what's really important to realize about colorectal cancer screening is that what we want to find if you are going to develop colorectal cancers, we don't want to find the colorectal cancer. We want to find it before it's become cancer, when it's at the polyp stage, and remove it and then prevent you from developing cancer. I think another reason is, apprehension about having what does the test involve. It's got, if it's a colonoscopy, patients can be afraid of, I've got to take a bowel prep, this invasion of having this tube placed into my colon. Those are sort of, I think, a bit of a factor that can play into people's decision making. And that's why it's important to know that colonoscopy, if that's the barrier, the fear of that type of test, that there are other tests that are available that just involve giving a stool sample or having a type of special CT scan.
Well, let's talk about some of those new testing. What are some of those?
So some of them are based on giving a stool sample, as I kind of mentioned. One is called a FIT test, or a fecal immunochemical test, that looks for a breakdown product of blood, which the idea is that the polyp or the cancer could be leaking some blood into the stool, into the GI tract, that you can't see just by looking, but you can with this special test. And then there's also a multi-target DNA test, which is a combination of using the FIT test plus looking for the polyp or cancer to have shed its cells that have DNA, and they have certain features, different genes that have had some alteration called methylation in them, and they can be tested in the stool. And there's also a test called a CT colonography, which is a CAT scan or a type of X-ray in which the inside of the colon can actually be visualized in polyps, and cancers can be seen that way.
Wow, so many options. Where can we go for more information to learn more about colorectal cancer? And just in general, I feel like we all need more information just at our fingertips, because it doesn't matter what age you are, you still should know.
Absolutely, and I think that knowing about colorectal cancer and, in a sense, not being afraid of it and being aware this is like such a unusual cancer, because we can actually prevent it by doing colon cancer screening and removing polyps. And that's just such a great opportunity for people to be able to take control of their health and try to prevent this disease, which, as it still can be very treatable, and that's been another, I think, amazing success story, has been the ability